Hey everyone, welcome back, and I am here to talk to you today about investments. Everything that I know, that I have experienced, what has worked for me, what hasn't, what to be aware of, and what you can do to get started, even if you are in your early 20s and you are looking to invest, or you are a seasoned pro. Maybe there's a few things that I've been through that you could learn from, or you could gain some tips on. If you want to drop a comment below and let me know how much you have invested, what you've invested in, what you've experienced, I would love to hear it, and maybe we can talk about it on one of our next episodes. So drop me a comment, make sure to follow and like and subscribe, and let's get going as we talk about everything investments. Sometimes people come up to me and they're like, I really want to get investing and I just don't know where to start. First and foremost, I would like to say that when you want to invest, it needs to be money that you can live without, like truly live without. So that money could be sitting in a savings account, you never look at it. It could be maybe you want to pull some money out of your 401k to buy a building, something like that. Definitely don't go into investing thinking that you're going to have money coming in right away and you can live off of it. That is a huge mistake. So tip number one to getting into investments is make sure that you are stable and you have little to no debt and you have money just sitting aside and you want to do something with that. So that is probably one of the biggest things, because if people get into investing and they're using that money they need to live off of and something goes awry, it can really hurt you, and that's not truly investing. So make sure that you have this money and you know that you're gonna live without it for a while. And if everything works out great, you're gonna have a good appreciation on a building, or you're gonna start having cash flow from your assets. Tip number two would be to learn to live beneath your means. So if you're in your early 20s, start learning that now. Don't start adapting to every raise you get, and then soon you just, you never have that extra cash. If you can learn to live way beneath your means, you're gonna have a lot extra that you can put away and hopefully invest. And then that will make sure that you have little to no debt as well. So that's probably one of the biggest life hacks that I learned early on, is to live beneath your means and stay that way. Don't just every time you get a raise, start increasing your lifestyle, and then next thing you know, you don't know how to live beneath your means anymore.
I'm a Lamborghini. I'm a Hollywood star.
And then another big hack would be to marry or date somebody that is on the same page. I see too many people that marry somebody that is not on the same page about finances, and it's just like a take and give type relationship. There's no growing together. So one of the biggest hacks I've learned is marrying somebody that has the same mindset and lives way beneath their means as well. It will literally quadruple what you can do. So if you're like me, you've probably seen all the ads for everybody that is like, I own X amount of properties, I'm making passive income hand over fist, and I've acquired like 30 properties in just a few years. And I don't do anything but work from my yacht or super fancy place all day. I would like to say that that is probably a lie.
You're a phony!
And there is some other stuff that they aren't telling us about, or they're trying to sell you a course, something like that. For a true investment, there really is no thing as passive unless you are just going to be a hard money lender and get that percentage of interest back. There's no such thing as a passive, how do I say this? There's no such thing as a passive investment. You're gonna have to be involved. So if you're starting out and you have, like, let's say Airbnbs, short-term rentals, those are gonna require so much hands-on. If you have apartments or apartment complexes, duplexes, those are more long-term rentals and they won't be that much hands-on, but you will definitely have to be involved on a day-to-day basis. Water heaters go out, Oh, let me tell you about this one. I had an apartment complex that has 16 units, and there are 6 hot water heaters that facilitate the whole place. Is that the right word? Facilitate? Yeah. Anyways, I had 4 of them go out, 2 burst, 4 go out all in the same 24 hours. So this is where I'm talking about you need to have some extra cash set on the side and not always just run it super tight or start spending that money. You need to invest it back into the property and be ready for situations like that where you might have 4 commercial water heaters blow at the same time. That was a fun day. So it can become passive because over time, you're gonna have like really good tenants and you're gonna have a system. And hopefully when I retire, I can pass that to a property manager because everything will be paid off. I'll have more fluctuation in our budget. And it can turn into completely passive. The bigger investments are more passive. So to start out, you're gonna have stuff that you're really gonna have your hands in. And then you move up to like the commercial triple net type investments. And those are great. You will probably be really involved to start, and then you'll have a 10-year lease and you probably don't talk to them but much once a year maybe, or you have a property manager do that for you too. So, I mean, it's all in how much you want to put into it and where you're at. And then eventually as everything is paid off and it cash flows better, then you can get a property manager and then it really can be hands off. I try to maximize my dollar on return right now. So everything that I can manage myself, I do. I don't really hire that stuff out until everything is paid off, then maybe I can look at it at that point. And let me reiterate that it is going to take a lot of work right off the bat to get started. Your first purchase is the hardest one because you're so scared. You're putting so much money down and it's probably your complete like life savings. It was for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this check, I'm scared to carry it. What if it flies away in the wind? You know, and then after that first one, it's so much easier. It like breaks the ice for you. And then when you get into that first one, this is what I like to tell my friends or clients that want to invest as well. Get your first one under your belt. You're gonna have a lot more questions. You're gonna see it in a different light. So after you get that first one purchased, I would say, think long and hard about what you want to do or where you want to be at in like 10, 15 years. Then what we do is we reverse engineer where you want it to be at to what you need to do today. So don't just get into it and just start buying a ton of residential stuff.
Shut up and take my money.
The key is to have a lot of different variety so that you're never stuck with a ton of vacancies or a big commercial shop that is like left unrented for 6 months. That could kill a person. Not literally, but it could really total you cash flow wise. And then let's just say that there's a downturn on residential rentals. You don't want to have that be everything. So make sure you get a good mix. So once you've figured out where you want to be at in 10, 15 years or what your ultimate goal is, and we break it down to what you need to do today into yearly chunks, then you can acquire these investments with a purpose and with a plan. And once you follow those steps, then you're not just going to be precariously grabbing stuff and buying it, and then you're left with just kind of a hodgepodge of things. We want it to have meaning and to get you to that end goal. I would think my investments are like kind of, I would say they're very well varied. We have a few commercial, the majority is residential just because like that was the easiest to get into. And then we have a little bit of storage units, we have a little bit of land. So yeah, it's good to have it all mixed. We have a couple townhouses, and then, you know, the end goal is to have them all paid off and just cash flowing really well. And then we can decide at that point what we want to do. So you might have a similar plan. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it because I've learned so much just from all the different types of things and just the last 10 years of investing in different properties. And shoot, the real estate industry as a whole in the last 10 years is insane. So it's always evolving, always changing, but you know what? There is one thing that always remains true, and that is real estate appreciates over time. So you want to buy and hold, and if you are into flipping, that can be super profitable, especially as an agent, because you can turn around and sell your stuff at a discount, which is great. If you're a real estate agent or you are a person that buys houses and flips them, then you know what I'm talking about when not every flip is a good flip. Sometimes there can be homes that I can see will make me money all day long and will be an easy resell. Sometimes there's big houses that I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could redo this 6,000 square foot house, then that would be an amazing flip. But is it something that's gonna sell good right now? Probably not, because you would have to carry a really large amount of money, and then everything in that high-end price point right now is really saturated. So not really worth my time. Even though I could make a ton of money on it, there's a lot more risk in that. Whereas I could probably take the same amount of money, put it into 2 trailers, and get way more profit with a lot more surety that it would sell faster. Oh my gosh, I've had so many random things go wrong with flips, but I think one of the biggest things I learned was I purchased this property. It was a little ways out of town, and it was on like 20 acres. It was a really good mobile home or manufactured home, had an attached garage. It was on a well. Well, come to learn, this well was actually a shared well with the neighbor, and the neighbor hated the previous owners of the property I purchased. So what he did was he went and cut off the well from servicing this house, and the well was on his property, so he was able to do that because it was his well, and there was no agreement. So out here in Wyoming, we have a lot of handshake agreements, which are not legal. And unfortunately, that meant I purchased a property without a well, and we had to drill one to make sure we could resell it. It all ended well, but it's something that I'm going to make sure that I double check on now in future purchases, that if there is a well agreement, I know what that is and if it's still valid. That was a nice $30,000 unexpected cost. You'll have a lot of those unexpected costs on flips. It sounds really easy to, hey, let's paint, get some cool ideas in there and rehab the house, make it look pretty. But sometimes you can run into some pretty expensive things, like if the wiring isn't to code or your HVAC and everything is not functioning right. You can run into so much that is like an unexpected expense. So I try to have a formula where we figure that unexpected expense in, and then if we don't have it, then boom, we're making more cash. So it's always good to put that in there and just know that if you are flipping something, don't expect it to be super fast. FHA also has a rule that it's called the FHA flip rule, that you cannot resell something and have a buyer finance it with an FHA loan unless you've owned it for over 90 days. So that's the time the deed is filed to when the contract is written. So I try to make sure we have a good 6-month span on anything that could be an FHA purchase. Just FYI, if you're trying to do a quick flip, that's gonna cut out a lot of your buyers, especially right now with interest rates being a little bit higher and buyers needing to have, or buyers losing their purchase power. So make sure that FHA works for your flip. As an investor, cash is always king. You're gonna wanna do that. If not, there's a few things you can do. You can get a really large line of credit at your bank. Sometimes you can get basically like a second mortgage on your house, and you can have that cash available to offer on stuff that's cash. I know a lot of like the foreclosed homes are great deals sometimes, not always, but they will only take cash. You should have a really good working relationship with your bank to where you're like, hey, this is my plan, this is what I'm gonna do. And they may work out a construction loan for you. They'll have a bunch of different options. So I highly recommend maybe talking to your bank that you work with and seeing what they can do for you. If you can get something with a really low interest rate, that's ideal. Not always does it work to just go in and get like a conventional loan on something like that because A, it's probably not even financeable with the condition that it's in. And then B, is it really going to be profitable when you're paying all of those extra fees like closing costs, yada, yada. As always, you wanna make sure that you keep a lot of cash flow. When you're purchasing an investment, it's gonna take probably 25 to 30% down on whatever you purchase if you're not paying cash. So make sure you have that figured in. And then I like to roughly keep about 6 months worth of extra cash flow on hand in case you have things like water heaters blowing up all in one day or, heating systems going out. And then just stay on top of the maintenance too when you do acquire your investments, because that prevents a lot of other big costs in the future. Yeah, I had quite a few under my belt before I did. But it's so much better when you can because, like I said, most of those properties are not even financeable. But once you start doing some good flips and you have cash flow coming in from like bigger rentals, then that's always going to keep that money in there for you. So it kind of just feeds itself at that point. And then get an accountant. Once you have all of these investments, you're going to want a really good accountant to make sure that everything is where it needs to be. There's always things changing with, I think this year we have like an extra LLC thing where we have to register it federally now too. Something like that. But I just do what they tell me. So let's do a quick recap of all the investment ideas, tips, and tricks. We want to make sure that you start off with something and you start off with money in the bank. That's money you can live without, right? And then we want to make sure that you have a plan and you're not just buying random things. And then we want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your bank so that you can be like, hey, I really want to purchase this property, and they know what you're doing with it. They know that you're going to flip it. They know you're going to rehab it or rent it out. They need to be on the same page with you until you work yourself up to having just cash flow. You need to be prepared for working your investments on the day-to-day. You need to be prepared for accidents and unexpected things, no matter what the investment is. Make sure that you anticipate problems and try to prevent them. I always try to schedule like routine maintenance on all the apartments and everything so that we don't have the 4 o'clock in the morning, my hot water heater blew, or our roof is leaking, or, the heating system is failed and it's 20 degrees out. We want to prevent all of that. So make sure you take care of your investments when you do acquire them. I think one of the most important things is to learn to live beneath your means and to continue to do so as you grow in your career or whatever it is and how you're making money. Don't adjust everything to spending what you're making. Make sure that you're setting enough aside to have more investments so that you can grow your future self. And then last but not least, make sure that your partner is on the same page, whether it's living beneath your means and having the same goals for investments in the future. That is probably one of the most important things, is that if you both are on the same page, you're going to quadruple what you can do together. And so remember everything that you have seen online and in the media about passive income. It's not passive. It could be passive if you work your way up to that, but when you're first getting started on investing, it's not going to be passive and you have to work it. It's a project. It's going to be like a second job. So just know while you're feeling the grind on all of that, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and someday it will be passive and someday you will be on that beach while all of your investments are making you money. And then going into Airbnbs or flips, make sure that when you're purchasing them, it fits your budget and that you plan for things to go wrong, because they will. And work with your bank and make sure that they know what page you're on, what you intend to do, and how much money you're gonna need for those purchases, because they come up and they're not going to be planned at all. You gotta jump right away on those good ones. And so you need to have that all ready to go with your bank so that you can purchase those flips or those Airbnbs that you're gonna rehab, or even residential places that you're gonna rehab and then rent long-term. The rehab, you need to have a very strict budget on, and then you need to have hopefully some good contractors that can learn what you like. And once you have that, it's so valuable, because then it's going to save you a lot of time. They know what you want, they know your expectations, and then you can start to estimate what things will cost. That's been huge for me. Is I've worked with a couple different contractors very steadily over the last 8 years, and I can pretty much pin down what the cost will be on a flip within about $5,000 when I'm looking at something. So it pays off to be able to work with the same people and have a good team on all ends. Have a good real estate agent, have a good contractor, have a good banker. All of that's gonna work together. Oh, and don't forget your accountant. Now that you have a better idea of the general aspects of investing, let's kind of go into what you need to have to actually start investing, or how much money you would need to have to utilize one. I think probably the simplest way I can say it is, if you were to just purchase a house and you just paid minimal amount of closing costs, shoot, we could even negotiate the closing costs covered, and you have credit cards with like $30,000 that are free and clear for you to do the rehab on this property, you could, in a sense, finance all of that on your credit cards. Hopefully they're even 0%. That would be even better. And you know this house would resell within just like, say, 60 days, because it's what everybody is going for right now. Perfect price point, all of that. And you go do the work yourself. You finance everything on the credit cards, and then you resell it. You pay off your credit cards with your net proceeds, and you still have extra money left over. That's a really simple way of how you could get started with something. And you wouldn't even have lived in it. Or you could live in it and do the rehab yourself, your construction and whatnot. So that's a simple way of getting started. Or there is the tried and true, and it is wonderful. There are not much of these available right now, but hopefully in the future we will have more. But if you're a first-time home buyer and you purchase a duplex and you live in one side and you rent out the other, essentially, ideally, you can have that other side making the whole mortgage payment while you're stashing cash for your next purchase. Or you can work on rehabbing one side and then rent out the other and move into the other side and rehab it as well, and then do a cash out refi, or you can just have a ton of new equity in your house. So there's a lot of ways to do it if it's like your first investment and you don't have a lot of free cash, but maybe you have a really good credit card with a high limit and you don't need that for anything else. Just beware that maybe the market may shift and maybe that house may not sell as fast as you want it to. So be prepared for those steps if you do go forward with purchasing a house to flip. Another idea, if you are timid about getting started on investing, is find a mentor, and maybe you can go in with them on a joint venture. That was one of my first investments, and I'm so thankful that our good friend decided to do this with us, because he was chill as a cucumber about everything, and me and Blaine were like, oh gosh, what is this? And like it just was so good, because even down to like having some terrible renters and evictions, he like walked us through the very first few steps, and now it's like no thing for us to handle some of the hardest stuff. And it was really great to have somebody kind of mentor us on the first few investments. So I highly recommend that you find somebody that you look up to and respect and that is willing to go in on a joint venture with you, and maybe have that be your first investment, because you can learn so much, especially if they have years of experience and expertise in that field. So that is my giant brain dump on everything investing. I know I probably missed a few things or could add to some stuff. So if you have a few comments or a subject about investing that you would like to hear more on, maybe in a future video, please drop a comment, like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.